Well, it's January, so I'm going to give you some gardening and homesteading tips that keep you busy, that work real well for this month. Stay tuned and you'll find out. Hi folks, welcome to Set Apart Homestead. This is Travis, the Prepared Homestead, and I've got some tips and hints to kind of help you get your garden and homestead ready for the growing season that'll be happening here in a couple of months. So even though it's January in the middle of winter, and a lot of people think there's just not a whole lot to do during this time of the year when it comes to homestead and gardening and that sort of thing, there are quite a few things that you can be doing to get yourself ready. And so that's what I've got today, is some tips that'll hopefully help you get things going. One of them is trimming trees. If you have certain trees that kind of need to be trimmed, especially fruit trees, they do a lot better if they're trimmed regularly. If you just let them grow wild, they don't really start producing a whole lot. The growth of the tree grows, but the actual production of fruit is typically lessened if you don't kind of keep them under control. And you can find some great resources online on how to do this. And I know a lot of people get real nervous about, how to trim a fruit tree or even just an ornamental tree this time of the year, and they're afraid to kind of do too much to cause it to die off. But it's really not that difficult, and there's some real great resources online to teach you how, to show you how to do it. And it's super easy to do. So start now. Over the next 30 days is usually and typically a good time to kind of get those fruit trees ready for the growing season before they start producing. Another thing to remember for those that have perennial plants that you're kind of bedding over for the winter, typically one of the things you want to do is adding mulch around them to kind of protect them and keep them from getting killed off during the freezes. And so you should have already probably been doing that, especially if you're in areas that you're already getting cold weather or already have had some cold weather. But even if you've done that, I would suggest going through and making sure the mulch, because it settles, and going through and maybe adding to that and making sure that you have enough on there, because there's still, for most people, you're looking at least another month or two of potential cold weather in winter, and you need to stay on top of that so you don't lose some of those plants. While you're at it out there in the garden areas, it's a good time to kind of start cleaning them up, cleaning up the beds. In the wintertime, especially with trees and stuff, they kind of die back a little bit and are more dormant, so you lose limbs and storms and the winds and stuff of winter. So you're going to have most likely leaves, limbs, things like that that's kind of starting to build up in your gardens. And so it's a good time to kind of clear those out. And you can make some brush piles. Maybe if you burn, this is typically a good time to do some burning of that brush. Of course, on the right days, you don't want to do it when it's really windy. And of course, each location and region is different. So you should stay on top of that, of knowing whether it's safe to do brush burning. Or maybe you mulch it. Maybe you chip the wood down, the limbs. And so now is a good time to be doing that, of going through and kind of cleaning out your garden beds to get them ready in a couple of months to start planting. On the same note with the burning, January and February are typically good months to do controlled burning. Now you need to check with your local area, because there may be regulations on doing controlled burning. And of course, the time of the year, the moisture in the area during the time of the year is going to vary from region to region. But in the Midwest, typically January and February are good months to do controlled burning. If you want to burn off certain areas for gardening, or even some of the wooded areas that have a buildup of the leaves and mulch. So that is a good time to do that, trying to pick a time that there's not a lot of wind. Like today would be a good day to do controlled burning. The sun's out. It's been kind of wet over the last week, so there's still a lot of moisture in the ground, and there's not a lot of wind today. So today would be a great example of doing some controlled burning, and that's usually what I do is, to get out a lot of the leaves and underbrush, even around the house. You don't want to have a lot of buildup of that around the house because it draws in insects, certain pests, it draws mice in, it draws snakes in. So the more of that, brush and dead material and leaves that kind of build up around your homestead and little corners and stuff, it's good to kind of get that out. So, I'll go through and I'll rake all that up into different piles and light them on fire. And then, you can do controlled burnings, maybe if you have wooded areas or areas that you want to plant. And so this time of the year is a real good time to do that. Just because of usually it's the storms are kind of down low, and the ground is kind of moist at times because of snow and rain. But always check with your local area because there could be regulations on doing controlled burns. The more you live out in the woods in the middle of nowhere, there's usually less regulations, but be sure to check on those before doing things like that. Another thing to do this time of the year, it's good to get your tools ready. Your shovels, your axes, your spade, anything that you're going to be using over the next year for, gardening purposes, trimming, shears, loppers, anything like that. Go ahead and get them out. You may not have used them for the last couple of months, so they're kind of getting a little rusty and tight. They probably have some dirt on them from last year. Clean them up, oil them, sharpen them. It's a good time to be doing that. It's also a good time to go through and check things like lawnmower engines, weed eaters, things like that kind of get them ready. Maybe they've been setting for a couple of months, not really been used much, to go through and do oil changes, filter changes, freshen up the fuel, that sort of thing. And along with that, January and February in most areas are real good months to get out there and start cutting wood for the winter. You don't have to deal so much with the bugs and the bitey things, snakes, ticks, stuff like that. And you have to go out into the woods and cut a tree down or cut a tree up, or, in most people's cases at Homestead, multiple ones. And so you don't have to worry so much about the things that, can bite you, or whether it's an irritation or it's dangerous. It's also the weather's cooler. You get out there cutting wood, and no matter how cold it is, you're gonna build up some perspiration and kind of get hot. So when it's cool, that works really well. You certainly don't want to be cutting wood when it's 80, 90 degrees in the summer. I've done that before, and trust me, it's miserable. So for those of you kind of starting off, and that you want to be heating your home partially or fully with wood, this is the time of the year to be out there cutting that wood and getting it ready so that it can season over the year, the summer and stuff, get it stacked up so that it can get some good airflow in it to dry that wood out so that by next year, next winter, it'll be ready, or even what's best is the season after that, the winter after that. Most wood in most areas, it's really better to let it set for at least 18 months before it's used. But, you can cut that down to half if you have to. So that's a good time to, this time of the year is a good time to start your wood cutting and splitting and stacking it so that it can start drying out. And you don't have to worry about the heat and the bugs and the snakes near as much. Also, January is where you need to really start doing your garden planning. You've had November and December, so those are, good big family months, a lot of holidays that people celebrate during those months, and family get-togethers and stuff. So you kind of forget about the outdoors, the garden and stuff. So you've got the new year, January, and here we are halfway through January. It's a good time to really start putting focus back on your gardens. This is when you want to be buying your seeds. Because if you wait right up until the time to purchase them, a lot of these seed companies, especially the smaller ones that sell a lot of the, the non-GMO, heirloom, organic types of seeds, a lot of them don't have an endless supply of seeds. So if you're waiting till right before the time to start planning to order your seeds, they just may not have them. So now is a good time to start purchasing those seeds, get your seed catalogs out, going through them, figuring out, sitting down as a family or as a couple, and figuring out what you want to grow this year, what worked really well last year and what didn't work. Maybe why it didn't work. You know, maybe it wasn't the plant or the environment. Maybe you did something wrong or put it in the wrong spot. So do that kind of planning. Maybe you want to expand your garden. So figuring out where you want to expand and how you want to do it. Right now is a really great time to do that because you're not under this pressure to hurry up and get it done so that you can, get it planted. You've got time right now. So the middle of January through the middle of February is a real good time to start your garden planning and get your seeds purchased. And that way, once it's time to start working on it, you've got it all ready to go. And you're not as rushed doing that. It's also a good time to purchase things like your bare root plants, maybe trees, rose bushes, certain things that you're gonna, that you're not, starting off with the seeds, you're starting off with bare roots and getting those planted. And it's a lot of times this is a good time of the year to start, purchasing those also. By the time they get here, you can usually get those things in the ground before it starts getting really warm with enough mulch on them to protect them. So those are some things that hopefully can help you out. And if you're very new, which a lot of this is more for the new folks really getting into the gardening, self-sufficient homesteading lifestyle, know that the wintertime is not a real downtime that a lot of people think of when it comes to owning a little homestead, small farm. It's really busy this time of the year also. It's different. It's a different kind of busy, but it's certainly a good time to do that. Other things that you can be doing this time of the year is checking your fences, mending fences, checking fence rows. Maybe they need to be cleared out and brushed, cut and cleared out. It's a good time for that because the plants are easier to the brush is easier to cut out. A lot of your poison ivy is a little bit more dormant. It still can cause rashes even when it's dormant, so be careful with that, but it's less likely to do that. So it's a good time to do that. You don't have to worry about as many snakes when it's cold. So if you need to trim and clear out some fence rows and then check your fences, this is certainly the time of the year to be doing that. So I hope that some of these tips help you in your January chore list around the homestead to get yourself ready for the upcoming growing season. All right, thank you all for watching, and I will catch you in the next video.